everyone, welcome back to the makeup chair. So many of you guys have been asking me to do the no makeup brush challenge. Bear in mind, I am sick right now, so I'm super pale. My skin tone goes almost green when I'm sick. So I'm not really happy with the look that came out of it. It's difficult to get a really awesome blend, especially on the eyes, but it's okay. We'll go ahead with it and I'll show you guys how to create this look. I'm going to start off with concealer, and I always apply concealer with my fingertips pretty much, unless it's on a tiny little blemish, and then I'll use a tiny little pencil brush, but otherwise I'll just use my ring finger. You do little patting motions just to make sure that you're blending rather than swiping and wiping it away. So just do little blending motions. If you really want to blend it out over a long area, make sure you're barely touching the skin and just move the product, not your skin. That's the important thing. Moving on to foundation. This is one of my favorite foundations for applying with your fingertips because it glides on so effortlessly, and I basically just dot it all over my skin, and this is a really quick way of just getting it on your skin. And then all you have to do is to take your index finger, and I use my index finger most of the time, glide it over the skin, and this will just spread out all of those little dots and then just really spread it onto the skin, and then we can start to blend. Blending motion is either a patting motion, which is very similar to like your stippling motion with your brush, or you can do a light kind of swirling soft motion just to really get sheer coverage. There are some benefits to using your fingertips to apply your foundation and concealer. It actually melts the product and brings it to skin temperature, so it's going to glide on a little bit better, but you might find you've got a little less coverage with it. Now to set your makeup, usually I would apply powder. Now this is a bit tricky when you don't have a brush. You can pat the powder on certain areas, or you could try using a setting spray. This is a great alternative because it will lock in the makeup, but it won't disturb anything underneath, and you don't have to use a brush for it. Moving on to a blush, I'm going to use a cream blush because they're super easy to use. What I like to do is to do two dots. The first dot is going to be the majority of the blush, and the second dot is whatever's left over on your fingertips. Then you want to glide upwards towards the top of the ear. I also then take a clean finger and just blend that out, making sure that it's not too high or too low, and it's really softly blended. I also wanted to apply that same color from my cheeks onto my lips as well, but the first thing I did was line my lips because I'm not going to get a precise finish when I use my fingertips to apply a lip color, so using that lip liner will just make sure I get a sharper finish. If you don't like using cream blushes, or you don't have one with you and all you have is a powder, make sure it's not a matte powder. That's the only thing, because matte powders are actually very difficult to blend. If you have something like this, all you want to do is to pop your fingers in, pick up a very small amount on the tips of your fingers, and you can still apply it in that same motion. You just have to glide it over the skin and build it up slowly, little by little, and that way you'll get a nice finish. I also want to apply a little bit of highlighter because I'm a bit obsessed. Tap your fingers in and then just glide it over the top wherever you want to have a little bit of that shimmery glow. And this actually applies really well. Moving on to the brows, I wanted to use my brow palette, and I was like, how am I going to do this? So all I did was I took my clear mascara gel, really cleaned it off, and then used this like my brush. So I dipped it into a little bit of the wax, a little bit of the powder, and then just used that in the same way that I would my regular brush. Finished off with a little coat of this as well, dipping it back in, and then I was good and set to go, and actually they turned out pretty well. They're not as sharp as they are when I use my angled brow brush, or alternatively you can just use a regular old brow pencil. Now moving on to the eyes, I use pretty much all my fingers to apply eye makeup onto my eyes, and they all have different kind of purposes. I started off with two cream eyeshadow pencils. One I used on the inner corner and the other I used on the outer corner, and that way I can get a little bit of that blending going before I even apply any of the shadows. It will also give the shadows something to hold on to, which you have to be careful of, because if you apply too much of these guys, it will end up just sticking in that area, and because you don't have a brush, you can't really blend it. As I mentioned earlier, when it comes to powders, you have to make sure it has a little bit of shimmer. Anything matte will just be impossible to blend. If you really want to use a matte eyeshadow, just make sure that you apply a shimmer base first, and then apply the matte over the top, and it'll just be a little bit softer for you, and it'll blend a little bit better, because the powder on top of powder is a little bit better than the powder on top of just skin. So I use the shade Selfish from this palette because it has a beautiful kind of golden bronzy kind of look. I use my middle finger to apply the color, and then my index finger as a clean finger to blend it out really softly. Keep applying the color, building it up little by little, that's the most important thing, and keep blending with your index finger. Now for underneath the eyes, to get it really close to the lash line, start off by using a little bit of pencil, and this will hold on to the powder when you go to apply it. I used the side of my pinky and just applied it right over the top of that pencil, slightly smudging out the pencil as I applied the powder over the top. Then I applied my eyeliner just to add some drama to this look, and now it's time for mascara. What I like to do before mascara is curl my eyelashes, but if you don't have your eyelash curler with you, don't worry because you can always use your fingertips. Just use the heat of your fingers, curve them around, hold it in place, and it'll give you a little bit of a curl. It's never as good as using an eyelash curler, but it's decent if you don't have anything with you. Seriously miss my makeup brushes. I miss my blending brush. If you're only going to have one brush, then invest in a good blending brush. I'll put the one that I use in the description box. There's like 2 or 3 that I'm a massive fan of, but you just need a blending brush, nothing else, just a blending brush. Check the information box to see who I tagged to do this challenge, and I'll see you guys on Monday. Gosh, I can't believe it's Friday already. This week has just flown by.